What if your heart stopped, but your soul kept going? This is the true story of a 70-year-old woman who died, stood face to face with Jesus, and came back with a warning, one that could change how we see technology, the future, and the fate of humanity itself. I was never the type to believe in miracles, not really. I believed in God, sure, but not in stories of people dying and coming back, until it happened to me. My name is Margaret Bennett. I'm 70 years old, and a few months ago, I died. Not figuratively, not symbolically. I died. In a hospital room, surrounded by machines, nurses, and my family. I remember it vividly. Every sound, every breath fading away. My daughter Susan was holding my hand so tight I thought she might break it. Her voice cracked with desperation, whispering, "Please, Mom, don't go." And then, silence. Not just silence, but stillness. My body stopped responding. The beeping monitors went flat. I felt my spirit detach like it had always been, waiting for that moment. There was no panic, no pain, just peace. But what happened next, no one was ready for. Minutes after the hospital had declared me dead, I came back, gasping for air like I'd been underwater for hours. My first breath shattered the room. Susan screamed and stumbled backward, her chair scraping across the floor. My grandson Ethan froze mid-step. Caleb, the quiet one, turned around, eyes wide and pale. Even the nurses were stunned. One dropped her clipboard. The doctor couldn't explain it. "This isn't possible," he kept muttering, checking my pulse, my pupils, everything. But I was there, alive. I looked at Susan, her eyes full of tears, and with a whisper I said, "I'm back." But what no one knew yet was that I didn't come back alone. I came with a message. After everything went quiet, after my final breath and the stillness took over, I expected darkness. I thought death would feel like drifting into nothing, like falling asleep without dreaming. But it wasn't like that at all. Instead, there was light. At first, just a flicker in the distance. Soft, gentle. Then it grew, brighter, warmer, and strangely alive. It didn't hurt to look at. It welcomed me, wrapped around me. Not like fire, but like love. I wasn't afraid. In fact, for the first time in years, I felt no pain, no weight on my chest, no weakness in my legs. It was like all the years had been stripped away. I wasn't young or old. I just was, whole, free. And then I felt him. Before I saw him, I knew, like how you feel sunlight before you step outside. His presence filled everything. It was overwhelming, but not in a way that crushed me. It lifted me, filled me. Then he appeared. It was Jesus. Not the stained glass version, not the paintings in Sunday school. He didn't look religious, he looked real, radiant. His light didn't just shine, it pulsed. It reached every part of me. His eyes met mine, and in that moment, I saw everything. Every mistake I'd made, every moment I'd doubted, every fear I'd buried. But he didn't look at me with judgment. He looked at me with sorrow and love. And then he spoke. Margaret. Just my name. But when he said it, I fell to my knees. Because it didn't feel like a name. It felt like a promise. I don't know how long I stood there, surrounded by light, with tears streaming down my face. It could have been seconds. Or eternity. Time didn't exist in that place, not the way it does here. Nothing hurt, nothing was missing. It felt like home. So when Jesus looked at me and said, "You are here only for a moment," I didn't understand. I shook my head, whispering, "Please, I want to stay. I've lived my life. I've done enough." But he looked at me with that same mixture of sorrow and purpose. His voice was calm, but there was weight behind every word. "Your work is not done." I didn't feel like I had anything left to offer. I was 70, tired, weak. And yet, he wasn't talking about what I could do. He was talking about what I had to say. "There's a message you must deliver," he continued. I asked, "For who?" He simply said, "The world." Not just for my children, not just for my church. This message wasn't about religion or routine. It was a warning for all of humanity. and I could feel it, like it had already been written into my soul. I didn't know what the message was yet, but I knew I had to carry it. The idea of leaving that place, of leaving him, shattered me. But Jesus' gaze was firm, loving but unwavering. You must go back. And in that moment, the peace I felt turned into purpose. I was no longer just a soul at rest. I had become a messenger. Before I could ask another question, before I could even gather my thoughts, everything around me shifted. The warmth of the light faded, and in its place came something different. Not dark, but vast. Still glowing, but now pulsing with movement. Then, like floodgates opening, the visions came. I saw Earth, our planet, spinning in the silent blackness of space. It was breathtaking, blue, fragile, alive. But I didn't just see it. I felt it. The tension, the exhaustion, the hunger for something deeper. It was as if the soul of the world was groaning for peace but didn't know where to find it. Then I saw us, humanity. We were moving fast. Too fast. Rushing forward with heads down and hearts closed. Cities lit up the surface like fireflies. Skyscrapers rose. Satellites spun. Screens glowed in every hand. There was innovation, so much brilliance. But with it, distraction, disconnection. People looked at each other but didn't see. We were advancing, but we were also unraveling. I watched nations chase power, companies chase profit, and people chase images of themselves. There was so much pride, so much noise, and underneath it all, a quiet ache, a spiritual emptiness. In one part of the vision, I saw humanity reaching toward the heavens, not in worship, but in conquest, launching rockets, building machines, trying to transcend limits without asking if they should. Then the voice came again, not Jesus this time, but something deeper, a truth whispered into my heart. The future is not fixed, it is a choice. I understood then, what I was seeing wasn't prophecy, it was potential. And humanity was standing at a crossroads. Out of the swirl of visions, one figure began to come into focus. I didn't recognize him at first. He was just a man, standing alone amidst a flood of lights, machines, and movement. But then a name surfaced in my mind. Clear, unmistakable. Elon Musk. I'd heard his name before, of course. Seen it in news headlines. Rockets, electric cars, technology pushing limits. But I had never given him more than a passing thought. Yet in these visions, he wasn't just another public figure. He stood at the center of everything I was shown. It wasn't about fame. It wasn't even about him personally. It was about what he represented, a turning point in human history. He stood on a tightrope between two worlds, two versions of the future. Behind him stretched paths I could barely comprehend. On one side, harmony. A world where technology served humanity, where machines worked alongside us to heal, to connect, to uplift. It was radiant, hopeful, full of life. On the other, darkness. Not evil in a theatrical sense, but cold, hollow. A world where algorithms replaced empathy, where speed outran wisdom, where brilliance became blindness, a future built on control and disconnected from spirit. And there he was, Elon, walking the line between them. Around him, voices whispered, some cheering, others deceiving. I could feel the weight pressing on him. It wasn't just about tech. It was about soul. Then I heard Jesus' voice again, steady, urgent. He is at a crossroads. The choices he makes will shape not just this world, but worlds to come. And just like that, I understood. This wasn't just a vision of a man. It was a message for mankind. The visions didn't stop with Elon. They expanded like ripples across a pond, showing me the very tools humanity was creating. And at the center of it all was technology. Beautiful, powerful, terrifying. I saw things I barely understood. Neural interfaces, satellites webbing the skies, machines that could learn, think, decide. Neuralink pulsed like a heartbeat in the vision, a bridge between the human brain and artificial intelligence. At first, it looked like a miracle. In one future, these inventions were breathtaking. A blind man saw again. A paralyzed girl walked. People across continents connected not through screens but through understanding. It felt like heaven's wisdom working through human hands. But then the vision shifted, and the same technology turned. In that version, Neuralink didn't free people, it harnessed them. Individuals weren't seen as souls anymore. They were numbers, data streams. Their thoughts tracked, their emotions predicted, their choices controlled. I saw humans plugged in but spiritually offline. Their minds were alive, but their hearts were empty. AI wasn't the enemy. Space travel wasn't evil. Even the wires weren't the problem. The danger was why we built them. The danger was who held the blueprint. The danger was the absence of God in the design. And then I heard it. Not a voice this time, but a truth rising in my heart. Technology is not the villain. Intention is. We are not building machines, we are building mirrors. And what they reflect depends entirely on what we value. I watched as humanity stood holding a gift, brilliant, divine in potential. But in the wrong hands, it could strip away the very image of God within us. As the vision slowed, the light returned. Gentler now, almost somber. And then Jesus spoke again. Not with thunder, but with gravity. His words didn't just echo, they landed like stone on my chest. Pray for him. At first, I didn't understand. For Elon? I asked quietly. Yes, he said. Pray for the choices he will make. There was a weight to those words that went far beyond any man. Jesus wasn't pointing to celebrity or genius or innovation. He was pointing to something deeper. The enemy seeks to use his brilliance against him. That's when I understood. This wasn't a war of technology. It wasn't a political message or a sermon on science. This was about the soul of humanity, the part of us that still hopes, still feels, still reaches for something greater than ourselves. Elon Musk wasn't just a man in these visions. He was a symbol, a crossroads. His choices would carry ripples that reached far beyond his own life. The tools he was building weren't just mechanical. They were spiritual levers, and whether they lifted us up or pulled us apart would depend on the heart behind the design. Jesus wasn't angry. He wasn't afraid, but his voice carried urgency, like someone who saw two paths stretched before us, and time running short. This isn't just about him, I whispered. And Jesus responded, not with words, but with truth that flooded my spirit. It's about all of you. What he builds, you will live with. It was no longer just a vision, it was a calling. I didn't want to leave that place. Not after feeling the warmth of divine love, not after seeing a world so alive it made earth feel dim. I had never known peace like that, complete, eternal, weightless. But Jesus had made it clear, you must go back. The moment he said those words, the light began to fade. The colors, the music, the stillness. It all started slipping away like a dream unraveling in reverse. And before I could hold on, before I could say thank you or I'm not ready, I was pulled back into my body, back into pain, back into a room full of shock and disbelief. When I opened my eyes, everything felt heavier. The hospital lights were harsh. My chest ached. My throat was raw. My daughter was screaming. My grandson stood frozen. The machines I had outlived buzzed with confusion. But none of it mattered more than what I had brought with me, the message. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask to become someone who speaks about Elon Musk, artificial intelligence, or the soul of technology. I'm just a grandmother, a widow, a woman who was supposed to die quietly. But I didn't. And I believe there's a reason for that. Jesus didn't just give me a warning, he gave me an invitation. The future is not fixed. We still have time to choose light over fear, connection over control, faith over ambition. The question isn't what Elon Musk will do. The question is, what will we do? Because the time to decide is now.